Recording is on.
Today is September 26, 2021, and we will be continuing our discussion on the Desiderata Extinctionati. Updates on our contacts. So unfortunately, I'll start off with Spencer and Jeff. I sent them one last email. He suggested to see if they could just have one last chat with us, but I haven't heard back. So I'm sure a lot of you've seen the emails, but it doesn't seem like they're interested in working with us anymore. So we might have to find a new artist or our artistic director to help us with this, with the ARG.
Yeah, that was sad. But yeah, the email that Mike sent is just to ask them to do one more interview to just let everybody know their thinking, but I don't know if they will do it, but just to try and get closure. It's odd because they kind of dinging us for not being completely open and doxing ourselves, and the whole thing about Bright Axiom was absolute discretion, and I think Spencer's thinking more in terms of once a consensus reality, but I think that the world's heading in the other direction. Is you don't want to dox yourself, and not in this coming climate. And we're not heading for a consensus reality. The best you can hope for is a consensus delusion, but everybody's disappearing into their own delusions now. So I think they are also disappearing into their own delusion, and their own delusion is that they can be in a consensus reality where you have a tsar of truth and you don't have any fake news, and it's unrealistic. We're heading for totalitarianism and psyops, and so we're in this middle of this big psyop, and you have to embrace the discord. You can't now run for this liberal idea that we can turn back the clock to to a time when I don't think there ever was a time when everybody actually only stuck with the truth and did a consensus reality, and there was no propaganda and there was no untruth, and I don't think there ever was that time. So it's funny how we certainly heading into collapse, and people are feeling it. it's a kind of a Titanic moment where, you know, everybody realizes this ship is sinking. And then they all go into these weird kind of modes, you know, this one hits the bar, this one turns to Jesus, this one runs to make a life raft. But they're all kind of headless chickens. I feel, you know, it's a very weird time as people start to realize things are bad, and I'm disappointed at how few people want to do anything. There's a lot of paralysis. It's my natural instincts are to try and do something, to try and fight, to work against the system. I think most people they don't want to. They want to stick their heads in the sand. Really, they want to. I guess it takes an effort of will or something. It needs a bit of strength, but they seem to me to be sticking their heads in the sand. So, yeah, maybe these people will come back. But yeah, I have a firm view about where we're headed, and that's totalitarianism. So, in a totalitarian existence, you have to think of it like the GDR or Nazi Germany, or living under Ceausescu, or living in communist China today. You have to think of it in terms of how do you conduct yourself, and I think you have to fight back, and I think you have to go underground and form secret societies and start working against the system. It seems so obvious to me, but I guess if you go back to like Nazi Germany when it was just starting in the 30s, and it resembles this kind of reaction that in Cabaret. Remember Liza Minnelli's Cabaret? Well, Jeff and Spencer, would fit right into that movie, and their reaction now is they are theater performers, and artists and stuff don't do well under totalitarian regimes, so they should start thinking about fighting back. But anyway, you just carry on. Just carry on. What do you think, Mike? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point, whoever we have, we use what we got. I mean, I think that's important. I mean, we can't hope for a savior or somebody to save us. We have what we have, and we move forward. I think. I was just thinking. And the last conversation we had with Max, it's very, very difficult to convince people of what's going on regarding collapse, or even the flaws and the pitfalls of technology. It does take a long time, and I just wanted to make a comment. From getting a person from A to Z, it could take 100 years. I mean, at this point, we don't have that much time, and I'd say if they can't be convinced now, there's no time. So I don't know what to. Yeah, I think we just have to press on at this point. Yeah, that's my. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea is that you got to try and be of service to people, and they're flocking to tourism. I think COVID changed a lot. But you saw that thing that 57% of people between 16 and 25 now are doomers. That means the majority of kids are doomers. And they don't really know what to do or where to go. The system can't help them. The psychiatrists and the psychologists and the therapists, and they don't know what the hell to do. I had a therapist to me. He's a practicing therapist. And he said, should I... Well, he also does business consulting. So he said, should he start telling people about doomerism and telling people, maybe you should start making your plans for your company to incorporate a bit of collapse, because there are all these people that are thinking, well, they're going to start their own companies and roar off and get rich and retire at 60. And we're talking these people in their 20s and 30s, and they're just not really clued in for where they're heading. And so this guy is like, he sees it. He's kind of 65, so he sees it all, and he doesn't know what to say. As a therapist, you're supposed to just buck people up, get their self-esteem back, help them to get more positive. And he's starting to feel like a bit like a fraud because he's not he's filling these people's heads with delusions and then pushing them back into society, which is kind of what all psychologists really do. And psychiatrists then just make people, they just give you a few uppers and just give you happy pills and then say, go get back to work. And so even they not having the doomer conversation. So with all the statistics saying that all these kids are now depressed and doomers, I haven't seen them really say, look, we must have a few conferences on how do we address doomerism? How do we address collapse? Most of them are just carrying on, and it's, the old tools saying, well, you give them happy pills and tell them to get a job. So, it's, I think the system is failing these kids, and they're starting to realize. I think that's what COVID has done in the last year. They've started to realize that the system can't help them. They can't really cry to the politicians. They can't really cry to the boomers and say, hey, we want you to act responsibly and restore the world. They're starting to get the fact that the world is trash. And so that's, I think everybody can offer these kids something. The fact that you know all this, you're a bit of an adult, means you can help people out. It's like there's so much you can do, it seems to me. I mean, if you're on the Titanic and you know that it really is going down, there's a lot you can do for people. Just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It just
Yeah,
seems like you can ease
I
a lot of
agree.
pain. You can help a lot of people.
I mean,
So,
if I've learned
yeah, I
anything,
mean, I just think we have to pair our.
yeah. Oh, I just wanted
Go
to
ahead,
say,
go ahead.
if I learned anything from joining the Desiderata, it's just to think things differently. I mean, being in cities, we have this mindset that we have to continue living like this, when living in industrialized civilization is actually the problem. And the things that they try to do to fix the problem just tries to alleviate the symptoms, but the problem itself is still there. So psychologists say, oh, just do some positive thinking, and you're saying, no, work is not, we're not supposed to be working like this. This isn't how we were evolved. Driving cars from uh, you know, for hundreds kilometers, that's not right. I mean, it's like thinking. And then the funny thing is, I had a conversation with a friend the other day, just addressing. I didn't try to convince him. I just said, have you ever thought about driving and how it's not, we weren't at first, we're not evolved to do that. Second, it takes a lot more, it takes up a lot of energy. And if you think about how nature does its thing, nature is the most efficient at converting energy, and it just does it so uh, easily, it seems like. And for man, we put so much energy and effort, and at the expense of the planet, just driving it to, I mean, driving everything into extinction. So, I mean, I didn't go in that far, but I just had him thinking in that direction. And he said, I never thought about it that way. And yeah, that's when I realized, oh, okay, maybe people just need to think things a little differently, step out of their city. But yeah, I see what you're saying. We can provide some something to these people. Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest gift you can give to people is help them see that they're living in an opposite world. So everybody sees all this collapse going on, and they want to slit their wrists, and you say, no, it's good. They mistake all these things that sound like bad news. That well, the mainstream media reports them as bad news, but they're not bad news. Most of them are good news. So when you get shortages in the shops and stuff, and supply chains breaking down, that's actually good news. But they don't report it that way because they want to keep this insanity going. But you say anything that stops the insanity is good, and so that's why I posted that thing about war. Everybody thinks, oh no, war would be terrible. I said, no, no. We need anything that stops the system, anything that breaks the system down. We're in the Hail Mary pass kind of situation now. It's like anything that can disrupt the trajectory we're on. So if you say like, well, the pilot faints and cracks his head on the dashboard, and people say, oh no, the pilot just fainted and crashed, and say crashed his head on the dashboard, and you say, look, the guy's a suicide pilot, and he was heading us towards the Twin Towers. It's good that he cracked his head on the dashboard. So it's like, and then people, but now we don't have a pilot. Well, that's a good thing. You don't want a terrorist in the cockpit. People don't get that. They see, it's like, oh, the plane's hijacked. We're all heading into the Twin Towers. Oh, it's such bad news. Yeah, that is bad news. And now the pilot's died. More bad news. No, that's a gift. Put the two together. They never do. How can everything be bad news when the system is stopping things that stop the system? It doesn't matter what the cost. Look at the final costs. If we don't stop, it's everything. We lose everything. Anything that changes the trajectory so that we just lose something rather than everything is good news. So there's good news all over the place, and everybody's splitting their wrist. But that's the other side of opposite world. Is everybody has a natural instinct to say, oh, everybody's feeling down. The youth is down. People are depressed. People are doomers. People are losing hope. And then they think, well, natural linear thinking is, people are down, so we must fix them and bring them up. And they're like, no, you should be feeling down now. You'd be insane to feel good in this world. But they say like, oh no, we'll teach them yoga, we'll give them pharmaceuticals and fix them. And you say, no, there's nothing wrong with somebody that's feeling down now. There's something wrong with somebody that's feeling okay now. They should be going around, psychiatrists and psychologists, therapists should be going around to people that are all happy now and positive about the future and say, bringing them down to earth and saying, is something wrong with you? Why? I feel happy. Yeah, no one should be feeling happy in this world, in this condition, okay? So there's something wrong with you. We need to help you. But instead, we have all the guys that are having a normal reaction. It's absurd. But yeah, so just pointing that out to people. There's so many people that think there's something wrong with them because they're feeling down. And you say, we can help people to say, you should be feeling down. That's good. It's good. Good reaction. Good for you. At least you're healthy and normal. Well, now I feel better. Well, don't feel too good. People should be grieving now. They should be in catharsis. They should be going through the 5 or 7 stages of grief, whatever it's nonsense, but anyway, sing it. But people should be going through grief now. Should be running around in denial and having holidays and trying to find ways to make themselves feel better. Oh boy. Anyway, so on that score, and yeah, the other thing to tell them is the forbidden therapy. That you see, the reason why people feel depressed is because they're not fighting back. You don't feel depressed if you're fighting back. See, This, just think of all the movies you saw about the French Resistance in like World War II. If you're in the French Resistance fighting the Nazis, read the books about the people that did it. That was the best time of their life. There was excitement. They had parties. They lived for every moment. Sex was cheap and the love was free. It was like they were living the best life fighting. And the guys who were having the shittest time were the guys that complied with occupation, the collaborators. And so all these people are collaborators. And the mindset I think of Spencer and Jeff is, if we collaborate, they'll be good to us. Say, no, you're the stooge. You're the jailhouse stooge. You're the jailhouse sweetheart. You're going to get it up the arse worse than anybody else. You collaborate. Don't collaborate. About non-collaboration. So, yeah, my week is still going slow. I had a pretty interesting week. It was interesting talking to Max. But, I'm still waiting for Blondie to get back on the plan. And she's on holiday. So she got sick and now she's on vacation. Faulty's got really busy at the moment for obvious reasons. But you know that Sky News thing from Australia where they said about cults? So he asked us to come back. So Lionel and I are working to get a script for a comeback video, a response video to that. Because he sent that to me, the thing about where they're calling him a cult leader. so I thought, okay, we can do a pretty good response because it's a big joke because it's Sky News Australia and it's a Rupert Murdoch outlet. So here these guys calling everybody a cult, and there's like, dudes, you're a cult. Rupert Murdoch is running a cult. He's a cult leader, and you work for him. Sky News is part of a cult. It's part of the mainstream, progressive, millennialist, modernist, kind of technophile, progressive, economist wet dream. And so you are part of that cult. If you watch Sky News and you wet yourself and say, "Ooh, these guys are nailing it. Ooh, they're speaking the truth," then you are part of their cult. You are a believer in their cult. And so it's just cults versus cults. Rupert Murdoch's cult is, trying to ding this other cult. Why? Because it just goes against their cultist beliefs. But you say, well, which is the more damaging one? Rupert Murdoch's cult is heading for absolute certainty, human extinction. And then this other cult saying, like, we're trying to avoid it. And then they say, go straight to Jim Jones in the jungle. It's like, well, I mean, not all cults are Jim Jones, right? It's kind of harsh to go straight to Jim Jones because, take, for instance, the Christian cult. The Christian cult, they never mention the Christian cult and how that became a religion. So in case you never saw my videos, it's the academics say, the religious scholars say that cults plus time equals religion. So Christianity is St. Paul's cult, and a lot of these guys are Christians. So before you start dissing other people's cults, just remember you're in one if you're a Christian. And you say, well, Christianity lasted 2,000 years. It's apocalyptic, it's millennialist, it's doomerist. But it's still around. It's caused a lot of damage, but it's largely responsible for a lot of the trouble we're in. But you can argue that it was the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment led to the Industrial Revolution, and you can say that the Enlightenment was a reaction against Christianity, so a counterculture or counter-cult. But still, that it's kind of rich for all these people to point fingers at everybody else's cult. So anyway, that's the kind of gist of what we're going to try and get script to comeback video. Yeah, then I'm not sure about Sophie and if she's made any progress about getting talks and that. So that Greta is shaping up pretty nicely to be Joan of Arc. Last Friday, you saw that. But yeah, there's it seems to me, I don't know if other people want to speak to this, but it seems to me that the generational divide is growing. So that it's generational war, and it should be. I think that the kids should start fighting, and against us, against boomers. But I've often said, if these kids knew what my generation did to them, they would drag us out in the streets and kill us, and they should. They should. I would be overjoyed to see them doing it. But yeah, going underground is the only way. In the US, yeah, any public movement will be infiltrated by the FDA. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yep. It's now affirmed with the revelation about the. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the breakdown in the US is the factional breakdown is quite difficult to see exactly where the fault lines are. But I mean, the intelligence services, the NSA, the CIA, there are about 5,000 alphabet soup organizations. A lot of them are secret, and not even, they come under the agriculture bill in their budget, in their congressional budget. But those guys have an extraordinary amount of power. So even Schumacher said that Trump made a huge mistake dissing the CIA, because he says the intelligence services will have a million ways to Sunday of getting back at you. They said you don't cross them. And it's a remarkable admission on camera, but that is the way it is. The FBI is its own thing. And so the FBI was against the January 6th thing. It's clearly the Pentagon and the alphabet soup intelligence organizations. They were clearly, at least part of them were for it, and it was an inside job. So it's a complicated landscape, but I think that the way to deal with it is the way I said, is you need a home base outside the US, and you need to tackle it from outside. So hopefully we'll make progress on that. But it's the same as the ransomware guys and the cyber guys. They all have a safe haven in Russia, and those guys potentially can make a lot of headway. At the moment, I think they're just making money, but the state actors, and the fact that there is a pirate base, pirate bay in Russia, means that state actors can actually use it and leverage it. So I think that's all to the good. But that is the model that you have to do. It's if you try and have an above ground organization now in America, you're just as good as dog's meat. There's so many ways they get you from. You tracked from your phone, and they will with the address. They'll get you, with banking services and all. They just tie you up in knots so you can't really move. And then that's if you small fry. If you're bigger and more of a name brand, they'll get you in the courts, and then you're so screwed. It's so hard to fight a legal battle. It just neutralizes you, and so you can't go that route. You have to stay out of the thing. The main thing, the thing that we really can do, and the thing that you should be doing, thinking of later when things get really totalitarian, is in essence spreading disaffection from the system. So you need a mindset of resistance. they can't really do much. If a mindset of defection and resistance sets in, that's kind of like rotten apples for them. It's and the rot spreads. If the rot starts spreading, it can spread really quick. And I think that's what we're seeing in the youth now. So we went from a very big sea change in the last year, and it was from solar panels, wind farms, we must be doing, responsible stuff for climate change, and it implied green tech. Now you can see a subtle shift. If you see Greta and those guys talking on about the Fridays for Future last Friday, now that was very, very different. They said the theme was uproot the system, I think, was it? I think was the battle cry for last Friday was uproot the system. Now that's not green tech anymore. there's no green growth. There's no Green New Deal. AOC is on her back, caught on her back foot. So AOC and stuff is looking a little bit has been as established politician and stuff. It's just looking a little bit like Hillary Clinton, a bit on the wrong side of the fence, kind of like, yeah, we kind of seen through this act now, and we want some authenticity. And so, yeah, I think maybe Greta will become Joan of Arc. It's what we need. And but anyway, that's the way to do it is to get everybody to stop working for the system 9 to 5. So get out of this mode where you go and protest at the weekends, and then you go and support the system 9 to 5. You must go into work in your workplace, and make sure that when you come out of it at the end of the day, they are in a net deficit. And you've caused enough damage to the system through your work without being noticed. So if you can sabotage enough in your work day to come out ahead where they don't even know that that after you've taken your salary and you've caused them grief, they should be severely out of pocket. So even the profits they make on your work should be a net negative. And if enough people do that, then the system will change. But the system's not going to change while people protest against it. That's kind of supporting it. Is when they work against it. So when they disable it. And so that's but you see, you don't have to go out tomorrow doing that. You can just spread the idea first that the system is unreformable, and our last hope is to work against it. And that spreads. That can spread very fast, and it is. So anyway, but from the undermining the yes from the outside is the only way. Any internal efforts will be sabotaged by the three-letter intelligence and law enforcement agencies. Yeah, you see, don't get into the idea that they're all powerful. You see, if you actually work for one of these agencies, you would get the exact opposite impression that we might on the outside. So if they feel completely overwhelmed, overworked, under-resourced, underpaid, bullied. So they don't feel like we think of them as all powerful and surveilling us and getting back at us. It's not like that at all. It's basically these guys they're working for slave owners, and so the slave owners don't treat them nice, and the slave owners are stingy. They don't shower them with gifts and stuff. So they used to do that in the States a little bit. They used to, if you were a cop, then you would get a good salary and you could, have a nice white picket fence and stuff. But those neighborhoods are still around. If you in a plush neighborhood and stuff like that, you can still be one of Beverly Hills cop. But for the most part, cops now are all their all their pensions have been stolen by the state, and so they can't really retire. The stuff they made to do is against their own communities. A vast majority of these guys are actually sympathetic to the people that actually have to prosecute and stick knees on there. So don't assume that this is a huge monolith that you can't make a dent. It's the absolute opposite. Yeah, to give you, yeah, I won't. I was going to tell you a story about South Africa, but I won't. But I got to see the inside of the system, and see the inside of the police, and it was really shocking to see the difference of the people outside and the black people in South Africa, and how you know utterly utterly impregnable the system seemed, and how powerful cops seemed. But when you actually go and have a look at their day-to-day life, oh, the guys were hanging by a thread. They all, had PTSD. They were all having breakdowns. they were beleaguered as all hell. And so a lot of the, bat and swinging stuff is compensation for the fact that it's compensation for weakness. So a lot of the times when the public sees a massive crackdown and sees a big show of force, it's actually a show of weakness. I remember in South Africa, one of the things that happened was just before apartheid ended. Then Verwoerd had this big military parade, this huge thing. I had to go and be in it, and it was all on the national TV. They tried to have like a May Day parade with all these tanks and huge show of force and planes going down. It was all very, very impressive as a show of power. And most people were deceived by it. But you see, the only reason why they did it was obviously what happened was they had a thing saying, look, we're on we're making our last stand. We're just about defeated. What do we do? And then obviously somebody banged the table and said, we must have a show of force. We must show them, we're still strong. We can show them. What can you do? Well, we can have a parade. We'll show the tanks and the planes, and we can show them, what will happen. And of course, when you do that, you're actually admitting your weakness. And so that's often what's happening. Often when the police come out against protesters in large numbers, and you think, whoa, how can you fight this? You say, well, how can they bring those numbers out every day? They're on the ropes. They can't do that every day. And so, being a bastard takes its toll. Don't underestimate it. It takes its toll. So you've got a guy there. You might be facing a riot police or something with, that are pretty bullies. But you remember the guys that got PTSD. So. And they pretty shell shocked. But the whole riot unit if you saw what happened in Portland last year, all the riot police en masse, they cashed in their chips. They couldn't take it anymore. They backed out. Now imagine if you're the mayor of that city, how you shit yourself. It's like, it's like you've just lost your front line of policemen. They just defected en masse. Say, well, what's going to happen? The guys are going to do Molotov cocktails in City Hall. You'd be shitting yourself. You'd be like, shit, should I come into work today? Is that show weakness? But then if I come into work, maybe I'll get burnt to death. And all these thoughts are going in through these guys' minds, and then television comes on, and then they all act tough. But don't forget how beleaguered these guys are. It's very important in terms of resilience. But it's often a case of push, and then just when they look strongest, then suddenly they cave. So
yeah, that's interesting.
like internal resistance is growing in the US.
They hit a tipping point, and yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. Just when they're the strongest is actually the point where they're about to go down. So just because they show a force, that doesn't mean that's their strongest point. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to think of all the time. You have to think in their shoes. So if they overreact to big show force, you know, it's an admission of desperation. They do know that in some of the more enlightened necks of the woods. There are mayors and governors of states that do realize that, and it's like in enlightened places like Oregon and Washington and stuff. The West Coast places, they realize that if you come out in masses of strength, you make things worse. A lot of the time, they try to keep the police, off the active streets and let people protest and just even let them do a bit of damage. But they try to let people let off steam, even if it, if you lose a few windows at a bank or something, it's like, yeah, insurance pays. Than having all that feeling bottled up, and they realize it. So yeah, but so yeah, so yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you see, not a lot of people in America know how the system works. They don't know about the Federal Reserve. They don't know how the currency system works. They don't know how it's really a big debt slavery system, and they don't understand about the tyranny of the clock. So, yeah, I mean, all these liberals think it's a joke. Oh, you're conspiracy theorists. Oh, they're farming us. And, it's like, I'm free. I'm not being farmed, okay? I have free choice. I can have Coke or Pepsi, okay? It's like, oh, Jesus. Yeah, but people are starting to get it now because, they're starting to see the breakdown of the democratic system. So all of this is to the goods. So, yeah, I mean, you knock Trump as much as you like, but Trump has done a lot of service to undermine. Well, he hasn't. All the liberals say he's undermined democracy. He didn't really undermine democracy as so much as show it up. He's basically shown that it is broken, and he got to power in 2016 because of foreign powers hacking the election machines. Not, InfoWars and social media hacking the information machines. The debug machines were hacked. That's how he got to power. It was almost a joke. And so he knows. He knows the system is broken, and he's shown people. But the best thing you can do is to try and make liberals lose hope. So lose hope in the lose hope in the system, lose hope in democracy, and lose hope for climate change. That is our best hope, is that everybody despairs and loses hope. And then what will follow after that is debt strikes, rent strikes, wildcat strikes. And that's what we need. But see, if you're feeling like the system is overwhelming and crushing and the Great Reset is going to happen and we're all going to be crushed, it's not at all like that. You just put yourself again in the shoes of some of these totalitarians. Imagine you know exactly where things are going. We're heading for 4%, 4 degrees Celsius by 2050 at least, okay? So they know what's coming. And they, you can see what they're doing in China and America. They're barreling towards war. Now, a war is an easy way, and long, protracted war is the traditional way. You get lots of rebellious youth off the street. You draft them into the army. Even Napoleon waited for the école to graduate, so he would have his next army that then he would take to Russia or something and decimate. So he would each year he would take the graduation year, he would take it to Egypt, and leave it there to die, and then he would wait until the next graduation. When they graduated, he would have his next soldiers to go into Russia, so they all died in the cold. And that's pretty much how it worked. Even in South Africa, they basically they would burn out one generation, and then they would wait until the graduates could be drafted into the next thing. So they need the labor for war. War is labor intensive, and so it mops up all the unemployed and all the rebels off the street. So that's coming. I don't see how that's avoidable. I mean, even if you just the internal stresses in America and on the southern border, that's enough to make them really militarize. So they're militarizing the police, but I mean, they'll militarize the National Guard and the military abroad. It's like hard to imagine how you can militarize it more. But what they can do is they can stop spending so much on high-tech stuff and just spend it on training personnel. So they just China has I think 4 million people or something in their army. The PLA has about 4 million boots on the ground, and the US has about 1 million, but the US I think could go up to 1 million in with contractors and stuff. I think is the number, but they could easily go up to 4 or 5 million to try and meet them, and that's probable. I mean, I can see a draft coming. So anyway, the point is to prepare for these things, and imagine now if you are one of these totalitarians, just see all the resistance to just a small touch of pandemic before we've even started biowarfare for real. It's kind of like a minor sip of what biowarfare is like, and already everybody's rioting all over the world. So imagine that you've got a pandemic, you've got empty shelves, bread riots, and then they try and have a draft. So, ooh, mother of God. You don't want to be in a position of authority in America. Yeah. But all of this is good. This, the system needs to come down. And here it is. I mean, all these hippies from the 50s and 60s and 70s, they all gave up. They gave up just at the point where we might have a global revolution. So they reached their tipping point too early.
Yeah, so my response to that would be, we don't really know when all of these will happen. So it's best, if I learned anything from Desiderata, it's kairos, and be flexible. Don't don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like a lot of, I'd say, Americans think about the bunker mentality or stocking up when they don't know if these supplies will get wiped out after 1 week. We don't know how it's going to play out, when war is going to start, or if any of these will come in an order, or if it'll happen at all. So yeah, it's just be open to whatever happens and be flexible. And I guess the other thing is gain skills, not be more mindful of your skills rather than possessions, right?
Yeah, the most important prepping tool you can have is your mindset. So if you have a non-defeatist, resilient mindset, it's hard to keep someone like that down. So you just have a bloody-minded bulldog, terrier kind of attitude. And that's the strongest thing. I mean, it's all through the board. I mean, if you ask people in hospitals and say medical care staff, and you say the guys that die from say wounds or disease or something in hospital, and guys that pull through, they'll tell you it's attitude. So some people come in there with a fighting attitude, and said those people will likely defeat their illness or get over their wounds and stuff. But it's if you have an attitude like, I ain't gonna be taken down by this. It's like I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna fight, fight, fight. So like say, I'm not gonna do myself in. You can do me in if you want to, but I'm not while I have my strength. And those kind of pugnacious people, they can survive these kind of times. The people that die off are the people that have compliant attitudes, submissive attitudes, defeatist attitudes. Uh, so even if you're depressed now, it doesn't. That's not a bad thing. Often, depression is the precursor to an attitude to say, screw this. I'm getting off my deathbed and fighting. So it's really people need to really kind of hit rock bottom and then bounce back. It's not, don't get into the mindset where you think, oh, I'm not up for this. I'm too weak. I won't be. I don't have that kind of strength of will and stuff. And say, no, you don't know. That rather go with your depression. Go, hit rock bottom. Don't try and fight your depression. See, part of the reason why pugnacious people survive is they're not fighting against themselves. So they're not conflicted or divided. If you get into a thing saying like, oh, I don't have the will to fight, I'm too weak. Hugh says I should, be aggressive and I'm not that kind of person, and you just, the wind can blow me away and stuff. And say like, everybody get dropped there. I got dropped, but
Drop through.
Yes, I
I'm
got
back.
dropped, and now everyone's rejoining.
Whoa.
Did everyone get dropped?
Yeah.
Looks like it.
Hold on. Wow.
Yeah, I got dropped.
I got dropped.
Okay. So at least it's not my connectivity. No, it's probably some nights Jitsi servers probably overloaded. I guess we're not recording anymore.
Yeah, I'll restart recording. Hopefully it saved the previous session.
Recording is on.
All right.
Yeah, just in case this is just in case this is the only bit of video we get. We got dropped in the previous half of this meeting, and we're not really sure if anything got recorded. So if this is the only bit that gets recorded now, then that's what's happened, and apologies. But yeah, I was just saying that you shouldn't get conflicted. So you shouldn't get conflicted against yourself and start fighting yourself and berating yourself for not being strong and things like that. You're allowed to be weak. In fact, you should go and explore your ultimate weakness, and that is one of the ways of bouncing back. There's no law that says you have to survive. If you want to just check out, you're allowed. So, but it's my personal preference, and hopefully yours, to fight and survive. But so if you find that bedrock of resistance where you want to survive, then that's the key to it, is not to be too scared about hitting rock bottom. Most people that are real survivors, they have hit rock bottom and bounced back. The people that are questionable are people that resist hitting rock bottom. So that's an important point. But yeah, that's by the way, the bigger topic, in case this is the only video we got, is how to prep. And so there are a number of ways you can defeat yourself. And I resist. I mean, people have been asking me. A number of people asked me this week, is what the timeline. When do we go extinct? When does collapse happen? And so, and you mustn't get into that, because it's virtually impossible to tell that. It's difficult enough to tell what's going to happen. It's not impossible to tell what's going to happen, but there are white swans. There are lots of white swans, and you can tell what's going to happen. The white swans can be knocked out by black swans. There are a few black swans that might sideswipe you. But on the whole, you can tell, keep on putting straws on the camel's back, and eventually its back's going to break. So, that's a white swan. It's just keep on being stupid, run in the traffic with your eyes closed, keep on doing it. You know what's going to happen. It's a white swan. It's not a genius who, don't have to be a soothsayer to see how this is going. Keep on putting CO2 up in the atmosphere. It's like, we all know what's going to happen. It's not keep on growing the population to 10 billion when we can't support the people we have. And we know what's going to happen. It's not a genius move to figure out, predict the future. This is all very obvious. But there can be a black swan. You could just have a meteorite come. The clathrates in the Arctic could go off. You could have a tipping point. There's plenty of black swans that are good or bad for survival outcomes. But if you read my book, there's a good black swan in there. So there are black swans, but the thing about black swans is they come on a kind of log time schedule. So in other words, Pareto distribution. So in other words, 80% of the impact will be done by 20% of the black swans, and 80% of swans should be white swans. So it just gives you a feel for, you mustn't get into the thinking of saying, and now the aliens come down. So no, that's not a black swan that's going to happen. That's kind of white swan, negative white swan. That isn't going to happen. And Jesus is not going to save you, all of those kind of things. You don't want to get into those. But you don't want to beat yourself up or demoralize yourself making a time schedule for white swans. So, you will be surprised. The system is complex, and it will have lots of twists and turns. So you can foresee obvious things, like they're going to do geoengineering. It's on the cards. They're going to do solar radiation management. It's sort of unavoidable, but that can string things out. So, if you're in your 30s, solar radiation management might string the saga out for, until you live to 75 or something. You probably don't want to be living in that world. It'll be a horrible, horrible world. But they can string it out. They don't underestimate people's capacity for stretching out stupidity. And they, another white swan is they get into escalation in commitment. We are already deeply in an escalation of commitment to industrial society. So nobody wants to pull it. It's like Vietnam. If you don't know what escalation of commitment is, it means, chasing sunk costs. So everybody loves civilization. All the things we achieved. We went to the moon. We made Jeff Bezos. Surely the Enlightenment is worth that. So we love all the penicillin and all the stuff, Large Hadron Collider and planes and electronics, and we love all of that stuff. And so we say we don't want to lose that because so much was invested in it, even though it's a sunk cost. And if we carry on with it, it will surely kill us all. But a sunk cost is pretty much the best example is Vietnam. Is America went into Vietnam. McNamara and those guys knew they couldn't win, but they couldn't bring themselves to pull out. And the more Americans that died in Vietnam, the more it became, well, we can't pull out now, and then it's an open declaration that those people died in vain. So they make more and more people die in vain to try and avoid admitting that the people that have already died have died in vain. And so that's a kind of a catch-22 that we are in now. We are in that now with industrial civilization. It's like we can't say, the Enlightenment, Hume, Newton, Galileo, Einstein. We can't say that that's a waste. James Watt and the steam engine. We can't declare a write-off. The Wright brothers. We can't say they're a write-off. So we have to say that the Statue of David is wonderful. The pyramids are wonderful. Civilization is wonderful. If we back off now, our school teachers that told us how incredible this civilization is, we're basically pissing in their faces. So we can't. You have to double down on this civilization. And so, it's that's where we're in, escalation of commitment to a losing proposition. And so there's a very, the situation is really illustrated well by this film clip from the 1930s. I think it's the 1930s. In America, they had dirigibles, basically the Zeppelins and lighter-than-air ships. And that lighter-than-air travel, Zeppelins and things, was going to be the future. And so there's this great black and white movie of this American dirigible, I think the R101. So the R101 was British, but I think it was an American one. And when these things came in, they would tie up on masts. They had these long masts, and they would dock on the masts, and then people would come out and come down the mast, come out of the nose and come down the mast. But to get these things tethered to the mast, they had to have all these guys running along on the ground, and they picked up ropes to hold the dirigible in place so that they could dock it. They were kind of like tugboats. So they had like 300 or 400 sailors running around picking up these ropes and using their weight to steer the dirigible. And in this one classic movie, there was a gust of wind, and the dirigible was taken up uncontrollably. And all the guys hanging on the ropes, what they were supposed to do in that point was hang on the ropes and put their weight on it to bring the dirigible down. Now, the dirigible was not coming down. It was heading for 1,000 foot. And so gradually, of those 400 or so sailors, they all start to get it one by one. That's saying we have to switch from basically not hanging on this rope to bring the dirigible down. We've got to let go, because otherwise we're going to take a big fall from a big height. And so, one by one, people are starting to realize that in big masses, big chunks of people, that some guys just don't get it. And they are the really dedicated ones. And they hang on. And eventually, there were like 4 sailors that they eventually got to a height off the ground where they were going to kill themselves if they let go. So it was too late to let go. They'd passed the tipping point, right? The point of no return. And so they went up to like 1,000 foot. And I think one guy survived. He managed to wrap the rope around. But the other 2 just had to hang on the rope until they got too weak to hang on any longer. They lost and then made a big bomb, in the ground. But we're kind of exactly like that now with civilization, like those sailors. Is people will were thinking that we have to double down with our commitment to industrial civilization, particularly because it's very analogous to that situation. Because if you say anything about anti-serve or degrowth or involuntary emergency deindustrialization, in other words, picotage on a massive scale, then everybody starts to get nervous because they say, "Oh, millions and millions of people are going to die." And you say, "Yeah, but if you carry on, we're all going to die." So, because people don't want to take a hit, they don't want to believe that we are really going to lose everybody. We're really going to go extinct. And that's a classic case of this dilemma that we're in. And so most people now are thinking we have to double down. A lot of the kids now are getting the idea. Holy shit, we've got to cut loose. We've got to cut and run. And so the more people that can cut and run and quicker, the more that's the better off we'll be. The more chance we have of people surviving. But so in that kind of scenario, the best way to prep is not stop thinking of the old mindset. Try to ditch the old mindset. The old mindset is individualism. It's I will get gadgets. I will outthink this. I will out-defeat it. And that's the old thinking. That's the thinking that got us into trouble. So you have to start thinking in terms of mutualism. Not so much getting stuff, but getting an attitude. Getting wisdom will do you a lot more than a gun and a Bible and tin food. So, people very much still in the chess playing mode of, I'm going to make it through. I'm a doomer. I can see what's coming. I'm going to be the one that wins the lottery and makes it through all this. Those people are not likely to win through that. They have the wrong attitude, and part of it is extremism. So you don't want to be extremist. You don't want to make a big stand, right? The big danger in a cultish kind of movement, say for example like XR, is making a big principle stand. You almost certainly will be martyred. You don't want to do it. Don't say we don't do a Chris Hedges or all these puritanical guys. This hard streak. You have to bend, or they will break you. So it's not a survival strategy. Those guys get picked off quite soon, in fact. And it's you have to think more like a Weasley rat. Be a Weasley rat. We're a weed species. The reason why we survive is not because we made principled stands against Thor and the weather and Poseidon. It was because we a weed species. We Weasley cunning survivalists. We're not. Don't be scared to get immoral. So and I don't mean like a psychopath. I mean have an attitude like an urchin, like Oliver Twist, Fagin. Gotta be a little bit more like Fagin. And don't grandstand and make big moral stands. It's pointless. But TB, did you want to say something? Does anybody want to say something about this? Because I gather it's controversial. They teach you in school not to do this. But you say, look, we're heading for something like Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, you have to be a rat, man. You want to get through Auschwitz. You want to bring Auschwitz down. You want to survive it, and you want to make sure that other people survive it. So you don't want to make sure that you survive it at the expense of other people. You want everybody in it to survive it, and the way is to be kind to the other rats, but be a rat to the system.
Yeah, I was gonna say so you've seen or read the book like Into the Wild, right? Where that guy tries to go it alone in the woods. Yeah, you don't want to go alone because, you know, we're like social pack animals and we need that like collective knowledge to survive. So it's always good to make friends with your neighbors, I think. And then as for like the moral question, like for instance, I think it's okay to lie as long as you're not like lying to profit off of people. You see what I'm saying? Like, you know, there's some things that some people shouldn't know about you. Like, I'm not going to tell people that, you know, I'm a social hermit and all that stuff. They don't need to know that.
Yeah, you will be a wily fox. Yeah. So that guy into the wild is kind of a classic case of how individuals struggle to survive. You know, the reason why that guy died was because he got trapped on this river in Alaska, and he took refuge in a school bus. And the river stayed in flood, and he could never ford it because it was frozen. So he eventually ran out of food and died in the bus. What made it so tragic was if he'd just followed the river down, there was actually a bridge. It was about a mile away. He could have actually saved himself easy. Now, you see, and that kind of thing happens to an individual. But if there were more people, then undoubtedly some guy would have said, you know, fuck, you're a bunch of assholes. I'm going to go it alone. And he would have walked down there. Then he would have found the bridge, and he would have come back and said, hey, guys, I found a bridge. But you see, we need to get out of this slave mindset. The slave mindset says we all have to get along and stuff like that. We don't need to all get along. It's horseshit. But we need diversity, man. We need you don't need a fraternity of people that think like you, because otherwise you like that guy, into the wild, where he just stays in the bus. If you all have the same mentality, you have a stay in the bus mentality. You need one guy that says fuck a lot of you, and one guy that doesn't fit in, and one guy that's super kind to everybody, and one guy that's a doormat. That is how we survive as people. So, you want to tell people, if they do kumbaya and deep adaptation, like Jem Bendel, it's like deep adaptation where we all, slit each other's wrists. So those guys are not going to live through it. Those guys are, before the even opening act, they're already half gone in with a Kool-Aid. So they've already gone for the phenobarbital before the opening act. But you don't want to sit down and be friends and loving and things like that. You want to be able to do that. You want to have the capacity to do that. Doesn't mean you walk around all day with your bleeding heart and saying we must all be comrades and love each other because it's the end times. It's like, no. You want some shitheads in there, man. you want a variety.
Yeah, you gotta do that. You gotta do actual real tolerance, not this fake tolerance bullshit. Like tolerance of people's like tolerance of people's individual personalities. Yeah.
How tolerant is Jem Bendel's cult? It's like, first of all, they're all a bunch of white, preppy, cardigan wearing intellectuals. So they're all from the same stock, right? If you go in there and you say like, start effing and cussing and say like, you guys are a bunch of namby-pamby shits, you got to get a spine and start fighting. They would kick you out of there so fast. So they're completely intolerant. Because basically when they say tolerance, they have this cartoon idea of, brown people and people that have been oppressed and stuff. You know what? Brown people fucking hate you. Although, I'm talking about decolonization and that. I'll take you to Africa and you can meet a real African. You know what he'll say? You're a shit. I tell you, I'll take a redneck, a hard-bitten redneck, Bible-thumping, racist bastard to Africa, and I'll take Jem Bendel. You know who will get on better and survive better? I'm telling you, it's the racist bastard. Because at least they'll respect him, right? They'll say like, well, he speaks his mind. And I tell you, in general, those guys are not as racist as you imagine. a lot of it is fear and stuff like that. But yeah, it's nobody in Africa is going to respect you if you like, oh, we need to decolonize and we need social justice and fairness and all of that. And it's like, they're already vomiting, right? It's patronizing horse shit. It's like, they're going to take their revenge on you if you pull that stuff in a real ghetto. So yeah, people need to wake up, man. Wake up. There's hard times are coming. Hard times coming. But it doesn't mean that they, these depressing, maudlin kind of times that these deep adaptation people try and paint them. These can be the best of times and the worst of times. That's why it says that in the book. It opens with, these are the best of times and the worst of times. And that's why it's exciting times. Collapse is not doom and gloom. It's not wall-to-wall doom and gloom. It's in a lot of ways, it's life dialed up. So that, the gas mark is dialed up. If you don't like life, you're not going to like collapse. But a lot of guys thrive on it. A lot of, and you don't know. That's the thing. That's the thing. Is that's not a white swan. How you'll behave is unpredictable. Right? So people taken to extremists, they change. They change. A lot of people say, oh, the youth of today, they should have a draft and go into the military and stuff and do basic training. And I doubt it. But one of the reasons why they say that is because of things like this. Is in the military, they'll generally take you to your limit and beyond. And so that's an amazing experience, because the first thing is, you underestimate, everybody vastly underestimates the limit. They'll in the military, they'll take you beyond your limit, and then, well, I'm so much more resilient than I thought, that I just don't know where the next limit really is. And so that's really a good thing to do. And then the other thing is, you think you know what you'll be like in these situations, and you don't, because nobody knows what they'll be like. The guys going into, say, military service and basic training, and the guys that fare badly are the guys that think they know what they're going to be like. The people that are a little bit nervous, the people that are not so sure what they're going to be like, they fare better. And the reason is, no one knows what they're going to be like. The guys that are dead sure that, oh, they're going to survive this and that, they probably won't. Those guys generally fare worst. And you see, especially, guys that come into that situation, and they're nice guys, super nice guys, super fit guys and stuff. And then when they push to the limit, because the general rule is your personality will change. So if they have a super nice personality, you say, well, that's going to change. So it probably means that you're going to be an arsehole. And it's, the vice versa too. You get a real shithead. I saw it so many times. You get a real shithead. Take him to extremes, and he turns into the nicest guy. So, yeah. So remember that when you choose your comrades, man. It's like you need a mixed bag there, man, because you don't know whether you don't reject some guy because he's an asshole. He might be the best guy. He might be the last pal you have. So the theme of this is don't make assumptions about yourself, about anybody else, or about what's coming. You can tell in broad strokes, that this is going to be rough, but don't get into a trap of saying a timeline, because there's something. The minute somebody asks, when do you think collapse will happen? How long have we got? When will we go extinct? You know they're talking from the alien cortex, and they're talking from the wrong position. What's underlying that question is how they're playing chess, right? So what's underlying is they're strategizing. And so they say, dude, if you don't get out of that strategizing mindset, and I mean fucking fast, you're probably not going to survive. And it's obvious when you think about it. Okay, imagine like you've just been condemned to 30 years in Angola prison, a Ugandan prison or something. You know, Angola prison is a prison in Florida, if you don't know. That's really probably one of the roughest prisons in America. But imagine you sentenced to one of these things and you're going to be sentenced to 30 years. And then you go into this situation, which is a gang situation. You're probably a bit soft for this situation. And you go in with an attitude that you're going to strategize. You're going to strategize and think your way out. You're going to think your way through this and win by calculation. You're not going to fare well. You can see it straight out, right? You can see. Imagine if you're with some hard prisoners and you're calculating all. They'll see that you're calculating. You're not genuine, and they're going to give you a rough time. And so I just say that when you want to check yourself from starting to get into this mode for saying, so when do you think the BOE is going to happen? And then, after that, then the Clathrate's Gulf, and we reached a tipping point. And when do we go extinct? And so wrong attitude. You get out of that attitude. You've got some serious work. If you have that attitude, you have some serious work to do. And the very first thing you should start to ask yourself is, why aren't you letting go? So to previous things, and to Gary's question last week, is the attitude is kind of a nonchalance, like Jeff Hull and those guys were saying, but it's a nonchalance based on not being calculating, not being vested, not being alien cortex. In a way, it's saying not being alien cortex. And then your alien cortex is damn useful, but it's useful to solve the problems at hand. So in example, like in Into the Wild, where the guy was camping in that abandoned school bus, you want ingenuity then. You want ingenuity to find your way over the river, to find sources of food. But you don't want ingenuity like we currently are, like where you try geoengineering and you try come up with some alternative energy source, or artificial meat, or or you think like I'm gonna prep and stuff. Those are all the wrong type of use of an alien cortex. Does any of that make any sense? Just
yeah,
it's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is, we have to create, new ways of surviving, new ways of thinking, new value systems and stuff, new culture. If we can get that far into the collapse, I don't know.
Yeah, and
but careful here. You see, again, thinking that we need new structures and new culture, that is calculation. You see, that is the wrong kind of strategizing. So the main thing is to let go, because if you take hits, right? So if you lose loved ones, you lose ideals, you lose bits of your culture. So like, it may be the end of science. We might be looking at the end of science soon. So if you love science and you're a big science enthusiast. You've got Neil deGrasse Tyson on your T-shirt with Carl Sagan. So it's going to come as a big blow when you realize that the James Webb Telescope is probably the last view we get of the cosmos, the last deep space view. The Large Hadron Collider is very probably the last instrument for looking at very small stuff. The next scale up from that is 20 billion. I can't really imagine that coming to fruition. So it means that the next big collider won't be built. I can't see it happening when there's collapse and fiscal collapse and war and Britain. They're not going to be shelling out 20 billion to particle physicists so they can go and do atom smashes. So unless it has a military outcome or something, which it doesn't. So then if you're a big science enthusiast, you've got to face the fact that this is where science ends. It ends very messy. We don't know what dark energy is. We don't know what dark matter is. We don't know what flow is. All of these things it's left ununified. The standard model doesn't really work. So that's as good as we got in science, and that might be enough for some people to commit suicide when they realize that that's over, that whole line. So you want to have the idea of losing it early, so you don't, when you make these realizations, and they will get you, they'll from left field, right? They will come in the night, and you'll go, "Oh my God, I didn't know that collapse meant bloody blah," and that can destroy you. You can hit a bloody blow that will destroy you. So you want to find those bloody blows and give them up early. So in other words, if you are a science guy or girl, and you start thinking now of what I just said about science being over, and
Oh
then
yeah, I think I understand.
you're in a different world. Go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think I understand that. What I mean is, like, when people are getting together to try to survive and collapse, our relationships with each other are gonna change. Not like, I'm not talking about like big grand cultural things. Like, the aspect of what I'm thinking is our relationships to each other. That's the part I'm thinking about that matters the most.
Yeah, but the very first thing that happens in relationships is the division now, where people are in denial about where we're headed, right? So you have to, as a doomer, you have to be really quite empathetic to people that are not doomers and are struggling to come to terms with the fact that collapse is we're in it, and all the bad stuff is much closer than most people realize. So you have to be quite forgiving of people's ignorance and people's denial, and just accept that people are human, and not very few people are ready for this. But the whole reason why I'm talking about this and telling you about this is my effort to try and make you resilient and help you try and survive it. I really think that we all should try and survive it, right? And help other people too.
Along the same track that Mike was speaking earlier about learning things from these weekly meetings, I think the biggest things for me are the movement towards lessening the fear of death, lessening the fear of loss of comfort, and kind of, slowly letting go about what's going to happen, um, and just being alert to, I think the biggest should be to become wily as a fox, as you were saying earlier. But the other thing that I'm thinking about is the actions that we can take, because there's so much surveillance and repression and censorship. It seems to me that local little acts would be what would be fruitful, and if that kind of spreads and gets kind of infectious to other communities or groups, then that would be probably a way to survive or to resist.
It's a real tonic. If you try it, it's a real tonic. It really bucks you up. It's a real booster. You see, it, what they don't want you to know is complying with the system sucks. It drains you because there's cognitive dissonance in it. It's like going into work for this company. You know that they're exploiting you. They're paying you for your time and keeping your work product. I mean, that's how capitalist companies stay in profit. So there's cognitive dissonance because you're required to be a team player and be dedicated to the company all the time while you know the company's abusing you and shafting you. And so if you start to get back at the system, at the local parasites that are closest to you, that are sucking your blood, it starts to be fun. It starts to be, you can start to get a real buzz out of it. You start to really relish it, and they scared of that. If that can catch on like wildfire, that can really go viral. That people can start to enjoy bringing the system down. You see, it takes a lot of effort to go and sit in the road and say, insulate Britain or something like that, because these guys are being complete obstinate assholes and not listening to you, and you're really, really fighting for a better future and not getting anywhere. The people burn out like so quickly, but you don't burn out if you just go in and fuck the system, slow you, and you don't get caught. You start to feel like $1 million. You feel really good,
Yeah, like
and it
putting
eventually becomes
Yeah,
like
you start by
putting
taking longer breaks and then you go from there.
well, there's like putting little bugs in the code that one writes, right?
yeah. Well, but I'll tell you the most sabotage you can possibly do is by letting the executives do what they want. You see, what happens in most American companies is that the executives are clueless, fucking psychopathic idiots. And the only reason why corporations function and the stock price doesn't plummet every day of the week is because there are all the rest of the employees are compensating. So the management is completely fucked up, but the people, particularly in the middle tier, all the experts, the guys that have the hand on the machines, they always compensate. They steer the thing in the right direction so that there's not too much damage and stuff. And so that compensating action, if you just withhold that, that's the most damage you can do. So it's if you do exactly what the CEO wants, the company will be on the rocks in short order. But you see, what happens in most of the companies today is people will offer better advice. They'll cajole him. They'll try and steer him. They'll work overtime to make sure the company that's exploiting them comes out on top and doesn't get damaged by the CEO. But so if you just withdraw that and you do, or even if you really want to be devious, double down on what the CEO says. So if the CEO says, let's do this stupid ass thing that would bankrupt the company, and you go, yeah, but what about doing that and 150% or even 200%? And then the CEO will go, yeah. And you go,
You are
right,
so
just fuck that
devilishly
company.
clever. You are so devilishly clever. And I remember this from a previous forum too. Like, let the moronic leaders have their way, and and double down, help them along, and one will probably even get a promotion.
Yeah, you have to be careful because they will look for scapegoats afterwards. but yeah, but if you get really good at it, you can encourage them along, and basically you can do it behind closed doors, right? You could so take the CEO out for a drink and say, I don't know how big the company is or what your position is, but take the CEO out for a drink afterwards and say, like, I really liked your idea. So basically, but you should only do that, but more. And then, over a drink where nobody knows that you even did that. and then you're encouraging behind the scenes from everybody will think, he's worse than normal. You say, yeah, he is. Don't know why. And then say, did you go and have a drink with him last night? And they're like, yeah, I went to try and reason with him and tone him down, but no, he's manic on this. But yeah, people, saboteurs like that can bring down countries. You see, it's the important. That's why it's so important to get people to withdraw their loyalty, because the whole rotten machine, it relies on people sacrificing for it, correcting for it. It demands this. It's like Moloch. It really needs service of all these deluded culties, and so it's as soon as it's almost as soon as they withdraw their support and worship of the machine fails. And it has cascading failures. You see what happened with COVID. You can see the supply shocks and things like that. Those can go all over the place. Those if so, you see, imagine people catch on that this system is lethal and it has to end, and they have this kind of fatalistic view, like this system has to end. Doesn't matter what comes afterwards. Stop being constructive. The only thing that matters is being destructive. Constructivism is not constructivism, but being constructive and helpful and useful and positive, and those are poison because they're keeping this machine, this death machine, alive. But imagine that people start withdrawing that support. It can go through areas like waves, so that you get, in other words, like supply shocks in the system. Eventually, whole countries can kind of withdraw. You don't. You've got to imagine a world where a whole country, say like Germany, just everybody just got the shits, and just it could. Don't underestimate this stuff. It could happen at any time. Just imagine coming out of COP26, right? You know what's going to happen at COP26? They're all going to go. They should boycott it, but in a way, it's better if they go. And I'm saying that we should boycott it. Faulty and them are saying that they're going to take this boycott stand. So yeah, I'm saying boycott it. But in my heart of hearts, it really is better if activists go to COP26, bleed their heart out, and just see more shit shoveled in their direction. More lies, shit, obfuscation, subterfuge come out of COP26. It's because they need to be educated. They need to get to the breaking point where they go, they need to come back from COP26 utterly demoralized. Say, like, these people are either psychotic, the most evil people known to man, they're completely asleep, just have no conscience. These people just are beyond the pale. I've had it. Say, yay! Now we got a good result from COP26.
Yeah,
Everybody came away saying, this is finished.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, despite all the statistics and evidence, you can show that we don't live in a democracy. It's like people have to get slapped by the state firsthand, like backhanded, to really feel that, oh shit, this isn't a democracy. I feel like most people need that firsthand experience of the actual jackboot on their face before they say, oh, fuck this.
yeah. See, a lot. While these people are being exploited and milked from the system and being farmed, they don't. They haven't actually had enough involvement with the system to actually know what's going on. So they don't see the meat grinders. They don't know they're on a cattle farm because they always stay on the feedlot and they never go around to see the abattoir. But for example, if you're in America and you get into the legal system, go up against a rich guy in the legal system. So, basically the legal system in America is abused for sport for rich people. It's basically a forum for rich people to just grind down poor people. That's all the civil litigation is. Criminal litigation is for the state to grind down dissenters, but the civil litigation process is just for rich people to strong arm, little guys into oblivion. Now, most people don't know that because they don't go to court. They leave off somewhere where their school teacher told them how the justice system works and how a bill goes through Congress and how they have 3 pillars of government and how the judiciary works and how a jury works and stuff like that. So they think that there's such a thing called justice, and if something went wrong, you could go and petition to get your justice. And the vast majority people, suffer that delusion because they've never tried to exercise their justice. The first time you wind up in court, you come out the other side of that in a civil process and you'll be like, fuck, the system is just unbelievable. It's just corrupt beyond belief. It's just how rich you are. So if you're rich, you're basically a lord. It's a feudal society. Now you only know that when you've gone through the system, and most people don't get close enough to fight a lawsuit. So they don't get close enough to the fire to see the lawsuits and stuff and see what happens to you if you fight a lawsuit. But the first time they do, they wake up. And the same with activists. So the point of getting activists down on the street in street protests is not to change the system. It's to give them a rapid education into how the system works. And the first time they're sitting peacefully and doing a peaceful protest on the road, and a cop comes and sprays them in the face with pepper spray, then they understand. That's normally enough. A bit of CS gas shows them that what the system is all about. So it's really a rapid education system. And so we're getting to the stage where people will see that the system is not there for them. So COVID was great. COVID showed them. The lesson from COVID was the economy is more important than you little liberal shithead. It doesn't matter what your primary school teacher told you. Whatever they told you in junior school, they lied. Because the economy is worth a hell of a lot more than you. In fact, you're worth nothing. And now that everybody can see it, they all can see they're all thrown under the bus for the economy. So all of these things, eventually, that's people are getting a little education, and when they have their moment of epiphany, enough of them, then we're in business. So get the word out. Get the word out, man. So anyway, well, that's good enough for tonight, isn't it? Hopefully, I'm encouraging you to be resilient and to think in terms of resilience and to just spread a countercultural message so that shit's coming, man. You see, a large part of surviving stuff is foreknowledge. So even if you go through a medical procedure or torture or some hardship, if you're told in advance, even told that it'll be a lot worse than you think, forewarned is forearmed, is very much forearmed. So a large part of the pain that people are going to take and collapse is that they're not expecting it and they don't believe it. But if everybody on this call expects it and believes it, the battle's already half won. But all right, unless anybody wants to say anything else, should we leave it there?
Yeah, I got probably one more thing. I had a thought the other night that we should make our minds like water, you know, because water can turn to ice and mist, and it's always clear. Yeah.
Yeah, just that adaptability, that fluidity. Yeah, when I say that you must be like a rat, I mean that kind of fluidity, that resilience is lack of pride and hoity-toityness, and just be malleable. You know, rats are malleable. They're not proud.
I have one thing
So
to say regarding what you said earlier at the beginning of the meeting. I remember when I was young, when I was like 17, 18 years old, and I commuted to Manhattan to get a job. And it was the first or second time I was in Manhattan. And there were people in front of me and back of me and on either side of me. And I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. How can people live like I wouldn't want to live? I mean, I've never lived in Manhattan. I never wanted to live in Manhattan. I'm like, I wouldn't want to live like this. This is crazy. I mean, I like Manhattan for the theater and the comedy, but in the museums, but I everything's all in one place, and it shouldn't be all in one place. So
yeah, it's only your alien cortex, I think, that really likes a big city. The rest of your brain is saying stuff like this is unnatural. So if you're in an elevator or a crowded tube or something like that, that's very stressful for a primate, and your primate brain is telling you this is really really shit. This is really really shit, and that's why everybody stands in an elevator, you know, facing the door. They don't look at each other. There's kind of protocol where you stand stiffly. Because an ethologist will tell you that if you put chimps in an elevator, as soon as the doors close, they would rip each other apart. And we still got enough chimp in us that our alien cortex has to work, even in a crowded elevator, it has to work overtime to suppress our chimp brain and saying, you'll survive, Duncan. And, but the same in a tube is people that get used to a commute, they've got the alien cortex has got used to suppressing the rest of their brain, so that it's kind of like a horse that's got used to, you know, hearing gunshots or getting used to getting ridden, but they've trained themselves to be in a very unnatural situation for a primate. So yeah, our whole lives are too crowded, too complex. So a lot of these things are simplification. So yeah, just in terms of that, then the takeaway is if you're a prepper, you're probably being a little bit too complicated. You want to be less complexity, less middlemen. You don't want you want as fewer people between you and your necessities. The biggest necessity, of course, being food. But, yeah. Yeah, and anyway, just another observation is when everybody says, you know, oh, we can't abandon civilization because millions of people are going to die, they always have in their mind a whole lot of brown people in Africa. They don't forget, the sooner all this comes down, the sooner the brown people in Africa can survive. So if you're interested in justice, unplug the West. Because if there are millions of people that die, they are the guilty party. They're the guys in Manhattan and that are relying on the system. But if you need the system to survive, you probably are guilty of collusion. And so it's hypocritical to talk about decolonization and stuff, and bringing, and the particular hypocrisy is bringing people in the global south, letting them prosper and improving their standards of living and stuff. And it's like, no, that's all by your lethal Western standards, your lethal consumerist capitalist Western standards. It's like the worst thing you could possibly do to an indigenous person is to harness them to the global industrial system just as it's about to collapse. And that's what they're doing all over the world, saying like, well, we have to get the Piraha people in the Amazon and give them schooling and give them electricity and make sure they have access to Jeff Bezos and deliveries and stuff and consumer products and radios and phones and stuff. And you say that is not a great service to the Piraha, because 10 years ago the Piraha were doing fine. They would survive. If when collapse comes, they wouldn't probably miss a beat. They would just hear that the river boats weren't coming up anymore because the fuel was unobtainable, and that they would be better off. They wouldn't get the alcohol. And so we kid ourselves that Africa has to be allowed to develop and stuff. It's like, no, that's the crudest thing you could possibly do, is just develop Africa, just as civilization hits a wall. So don't ever forget that when people say, oh no, we can't actually do an emergency deindustrialization because millions are going to die, and then you must always say the guilty ones. That's called climate justice. Who are the ones that are going to die? Well, the first ones are going to die are the ones that are reliant on the system, and the ones that have the biggest carbon footprint, and the ones that are consuming the most. So we can spare them. Trust me, they've got all their just desserts. They've lived so high on the hog now. I think they deserve the death penalty now. I have no problem with saying that people are living in Manhattan and stuff. Is like, well, sorry, man. It's human race or you. And it's like, I have no problem flicking the switch on guys in big cities. They are the guilty ones. Just the big cities that did it. When I look out the window here, basically there are no fucking dolphins. Why? Because the guys in the big cities came as tourists and ate all the fish that should have been fed to the dolphins. So I don't have a lot of sympathy with people who come from London and New York to come out here and just destroy the sea. It's like, well, you've done that for 20 years now. Now what? Now death penalty? Yeah. I'm not in favor of the death penalty, but if we have to say, well, we have to lose 20% of the people in this lifeboat, I know who I'm voting for. It's all the fucks that live in Beijing, Mexico City, Manhattan. Those are the guys, man. You had your good times. Now take a leap, man. Walk the plank.
Yeah. It's that hypocrisy with the left too. They talk about imperialism, but it's like, yeah, the first thing imperialism kills, right, is the bacteria in the soil, the fish, and then the people, because of the agriculture. Yeah. So victims of imperialism are more than just humans.
The same little shits that say climate justice and decolonization are also the first ones who talk about electrifying Africa. He's saying, like, what do you think electrifying Africa is? It's basically colonizing them as tight as you can be in your progressive mindset. So if you don't want cultural appropriation, start with your own culture and stop exporting it to Africa. Because Africans were doing fucking well before white people brought electricity. And the last thing they need is electrification. They need you to fuck off and give them back their land so they can stop Coca-Cola using their water and start using it for crops again. So fuck off with the stupid shit about developing Africa. We need all these other poorer countries to get their chance to develop because we had a chance to develop. Say, no, we were fucking crazy and now we fucking deserve to pay. Don't harness them into our same mistake.
Yeah, they should take down those fences too in Africa and close those schools so those Bushmen can move around more. That's fucked up. They fence them in there like that.
Yeah, you know, on out of one side of their mouth, all these fucking precious little ecologists are saying, you know, we need to preserve at least 50% of the earth because that's what the scientists do, and then instantly all the indigenous people who used to be called nomadic hunter-gatherers are now suddenly called poachers getting bushmeat. So no, that's not bushmeat. That's the stuff they get to live on sustainably, by the way. There's like, no, we all have to be vegetarian. Those things have to be national parks, and basically, you know, they must be open to tourism. Like, boy, these ecologists ever fucked up or what? Basically, no, you got to take the fences down. You got to get the tourists out, and stop extracting shit. Get rid of the cell phones so these guys don't have a cobalt mine on top of them. Stupid ass. Your electric car come from copper. It was mined in their backyard and poisoned them. Fucking idiots. Anyway, enough of those hypocrites. All right, well, that's my rant. Should we call it a night? Call it a day?
Yeah, I think so. I don't
so,
think I have anything left to say. Yeah. Be resilient.
Okay, good. Well, let's pause and practice letting go, because you know, if you've mentally let go of stuff, then while you still have it, it's kind of a bonus. Every day that you have something, you know, it's like you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Well, if it mentally goes, then you do know what you've got and you appreciate it. So if you give up something now mentally, every day that you still have it, you appreciate it more and are more thankful for it. And when you eventually lose it for real, then you say, well, I'd given up on it ages ago. I enjoyed a bonus period where I still had it, and you can wave it goodbye. And that is resilience, being able to wave goodbye to things. So everything you do, everything, nothing, bar nothing, while it still hangs around, appreciate it, but don't hang on to it. Mentally assume it's already gone. And so let's do that with everything we thought you learned. If you thought you got anything out of this meeting tonight, thought you learned something, think you're ahead, think you won up, think you've stored a bit of knowledge, then chuck it out, get rid of it. So let's pause, and the way you do that is to fall still, give up any notions of acquisition, betterment, improvement, knowledge, all ignorance, because in essence, when you've given up everything, all that's left is the silence. Consciousness that you can feel now, knowledge that you are awake, and bliss of just resting in that silence. Well, give up a lot this week. Let a lot go. And it's very refreshing. Wonderful to cut these things loose. All right, everybody. Well, take care during the week.
You too. Be
thank
safe.
you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Take care and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Enjoy the week. Bye.
Recording has